Hello, and welcome to our special bonus episode of Grey Matter Talks Tech, your go-to podcast for the latest insights and conversations on cybersecurity, AI, dev tools, and cloud technologies. I'm your host for today's episode, Gill Drummond, Partner Manager at Grey Matter, and I'm excited to welcome Johannes from Microsoft to discuss his career and explore how location intelligence has evolved in 2026 and beyond. Welcome, Johannes, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
It's a pleasure to have you here. So we're going to dive straight in, and let's get started with you. Can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to focus on mapping and geospatial technologies at Microsoft?
Yeah, I have always been fascinated by maps from a small child when I used maps to find my favorite animals in the zoo over paper maps and compass in the military, drawing maps for recreational driving. And then later, when I entered the IT industry, more working with geospatial technologies as a customer and then helping customers implement Microsoft geospatial technologies and then ultimately starting to build some of these technologies that you and our friends across Microsoft use to work with customers.
Definitely been here, hasn't it?
Yes, yeah. It started back in 2004 in Germany, and it was really a bit of a surprise and coincidence. I was working back then as an account technology specialist, and one of the projects that I had was integrating a former Microsoft product called Microsoft MapPoint with an Oracle database for a logistics application, and that somehow got me on the radar of the Virtual Earth product team. Then in 2005, when Bill Gates announced the vision for Virtual Earth, mapping at Microsoft gained quite a bit of momentum. And I had the opportunity to join the team in the UK, relocate, and then work with customers across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and the Asia Pacific regions on implementations of these map technologies into their broader business applications. And then 2011, I moved to the US, initially also working with customers across the world on implementations. And then a couple of years later, I started to join the product teams and build some of these technologies together with my colleagues on Bing and the Azure side.
Oh, I know that we've been working with you since Bing Maps incubation, and it's definitely been a journey, and you have helped out so many of our customers along the way. So that has been greatly appreciated. And because you've been part of Microsoft mapping journey for some time now, we've seen the platform evolve from Bing Maps to Azure Maps. What's driven that shift?
Yeah, I would say that's a response to customer needs. Bing Maps continues to evolve, but its main focus is more on the consumer experience. Azure Maps, on the other side, uses many of the same core innovations that Bing builds and leverages, including technologies from other parts across the company, Bing itself, partners such as TomTom and AccuWeather, but it is more designed for our enterprise customers. And that distinction is something that I think matters. The consumer might need directions for a personal vehicle, find a restaurant. An enterprise customer may need routing for commercial vehicles where height, weight, and hazardous materials restrictions matter. Enterprise customers also have particular expectations for security, compliance, privacy, lifecycle management, integration with other cloud components. For example, customers in regulated industries may care deeply about where a service runs, in which geography, what is locked, and whether traffic can stay on a private network path or if it has to traverse the internet. So the shift is not just from one map to another. It's a shift from standalone mapping services to a cloud-native location platform that is ready for enterprises to build, operate, and govern applications on Azure today.
Perfect. And going back to how your clients and customers do utilize the platform, one of the biggest things that I've really enjoyed seeing you and your team do is you do listen to the feedback that developers have given you and people have used it. And watching that be part of the shift in needs and requirements is great to see our product is coming along. So with these changes that are coming up, we're approaching the Bing Maps end of life, so June 3rd, 2028, not long now, but that time is flying. With this decision, how should organizations be thinking about this change? What should they be doing?
Yeah, I think you pointed it out rightly. So Bing Maps itself on the consumer side is still alive and very well, right? And innovating for search and for consumer co-pilot experience. What reaching end of life is the set of commercial APIs that we call Bing Maps for Enterprise and that you have been very engaged with over many, many years. I think Azure Maps brings these same capabilities that we had on the Bing Maps for Enterprise side into the broader Azure ecosystem as a fully managed service. So that means enterprise-specific features, integration across identity management, how you authenticate, how you keep the environment secure, how you manage the compliance and the data residency, how you make sure that critical data isn't locked in log files that the system needs to operate and improve. I think those are some of the major changes: security, compliance, enterprise-specific innovation that we continue to drive on the Azure Maps side, while Bing Maps on the consumer side has the flexibility to experiment, to break things, to try something new, not necessarily be slowed down by the stability and compliance requirements that we need for the enterprise.
That's great to hear. And I love the innovation of moving forward and how things do progress. So with those teams that are using Bing Maps on the enterprise side and currently under license with it, what practical steps should they be taking today to prepare for the move to Azure Maps?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say my recommendation would be to not wait until the very last minute, but stay in touch, have the conversation with you, with Justine on our customer advisory team and my colleagues in the product management as well. We are now halfway between this time when we announced the end of life for Bing Maps for Enterprise and the deadline on June 30th, 2028. And with your help, many of the customers have already completed. Some others have started the journey, moved already some of the workloads and applications from Bing Maps for Enterprise to Azure Maps. I would say if teams haven't started, then a good first step is to have a good inventory of where these APIs are used. Often there's like dozens, maybe hundreds of applications on the web and backend processes for data enrichment, internal applications, tools that leverage these APIs, and getting a full overview and inventory of where these applications are is a good first step. But I think it's also about seeking the opportunity to not just replace like for like, but looking at modernizing and expanding on how location-based services can support the vision that customers have for their overall architecture. So rather than just asking, how do I call the Azure Maps API differently, right? What are the parameters that come back and forth, and diving only on the technical level? That is a fairly straightforward migration on that front. I would encourage the teams to ask, like, how can location become part of our data platform, our analytics, our operations, and maybe even our AI strategy, where we want to grow the impact that these technologies have on the business.
Perfect. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. It's not just about replacing like for like. It is about future-proofing themselves, looking at what the future holds for them, where they want to do, and taking this opportunity now to rework what they've got. And I have to be honest, there is amazing code samples that yourself, the team at Microsoft have created for Azure Maps, being able to do the demos, the samples. It makes for adding those in really, really easy and simple. So I definitely advise people to go have a look at those Azure Maps code samples. Your migration guide as well is very straightforward. I've had a lot of our customers confirm that they can follow the steps. It is easy to do. So taking the fear out of that, you guys have done a fantastic job on that. Yeah, future-proof yourselves. If you've got the opportunity to look at your code and look at what APIs you're doing, make sure you optimize, make sure you future-proof, and utilize the resources that this fantastic team at Microsoft have done for you. So wholeheartedly agree with you there. Yeah, Johannes? So as people do go to Azure Maps, we spoke about the code samples, but what new capabilities or opportunities does this unlock within the wider Azure ecosystem?
Yeah, Azure is just a huge set of tools, hundreds of them. So Azure Maps becomes not a standalone service, but part of a much broader cloud system, and you can enrich business data with geospatial context. You can integrate location and analytics workflows. You can combine maps, routing, search, traffic, weather, operational databases, and real-time data streams for mobility analytics and so on, all on the same platform. That changes the role of mapping. So instead of calling a map API in isolation, location becomes a signal in your data and intelligence platform. It becomes something you can reason over, you can govern, you can combine with other data and use it to drive better decisions. So that integration over the whole tool chain, the richness of the different cloud services, including what we built as a fully managed platform with Microsoft Fabric for data and analytics, that opens up opportunities that you don't have in just a standalone API.
Perfect. I'm glad you mentioned Microsoft Fabric, because we will be touching on that shortly. With Azure Maps fitting in with that wider ecosystem as well with Azure Maps, how important is that integration across Azure services when organizations are building location-enabled solutions? Part of me does think that the data you put in for quantifies the data that comes out. So good data in equals good data out. But that's across their whole platform base, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that being part of that platform is very important, right? Because most customers don't think about maps in isolation. A map is usually part of a larger business process, right? And the different tools need to work together in harmony. So that might involve mobile assets, operational systems, telemetry streams, data lakes, analytics, business applications that all come together. And that is why Azure, with all these tools that it provides, is such an important foundation. With Azure Maps, customers get the location service as part of the same cloud environment, where they already manage the identity for accessing the data, where they manage the security on how data is stored, how it is accessed, where they manage the compliance requirements and govern them, where they make sure that the lifecycle management for building these applications can include the same location-based services. Support and cost are also managed on the same platform. It's not two different things that stand side by side, but it is a consistent, integrated platform that covers all of the technical needs that customers need to build their application. So it reduces friction for the developers. It gives enterprises more control. And it makes it easier for location-enabled solutions to be secured, to scale, and to be integrated from the start.
Perfect. And I have had a lot of customers saying that the ability to have it within the whole Azure environment with the multi-factor authentication that's within there, being able to change the keys for that security and everything else that goes alongside it, but also being able to stress test and spin things up quickly is really enabling them, which does make it stand outside of kind of where Bing Maps was and that next evolution that you were talking about as well. So yeah, keep progressing forward. So we're now seeing mapping becoming more embedded within the data, like you mentioned before, with platforms like Microsoft Fabric, which we just touched on. How does Maps in Fabric build on Azure Maps, and where does it fit into the next phase of innovation?
So you mentioned Fabric. Let's start on that front, perhaps. So it's really about bringing data and analytics, real-time intelligence, governance, and AI all together in a single integrated data and AI platform. At the core, there is a component that we call OneLake, and it gives organizations a unified place to access and govern data, no matter if that is stored directly in OneLake, if it lives in Azure, or even on AWS, Google, Databricks, other systems that we can integrate and link to from OneLake as well. Maps in Fabric brings location into that same experience. So it really brings the geospatial enrichment, the visualization, the geospatial reasoning and capabilities into that same data and AI platform. And that changes how people work with geospatial data. Instead of moving data into specialized systems, users can now work with geospatial data where their business data already lives. They can combine location with real-time signals, with the operational data that might live in Fabric SQL with analytics that they can run on data engineering workloads, and eventually even with the agentic reasoning by building entire ontologies and having operational agents or data agents converse with you or even take proactive actions. For me, the ambition is that Maps in Fabric becomes the canvas for a common operational picture, the place where people can understand what is happening across time and space, and then expand from there into data enrichment scenarios, geospatial reasoning as part of agentic experiences that can make recommendations, that can already monitor the environment in time and space, and then proactively act on minor modifications or evaluate options and make recommendations for the human operator to make decisions on top of that one. So this spatial enablement of the entire data and AI platform, that is the ambition that we want to pursue with Maps in Fabric.
Perfect. And I am really excited for this next stage with Maps in Fabric. I have seen some of your demos and I've watched it evolve over the years. And there are some fantastic parts coming out, and it covers a wide range of use cases. And some of them I can't even get my head around. It can be used by anybody for anything. And it gives you such great insight. So we are pulling together some content for our listeners and our clients available that make available to them. But for those, I know you kind of covered it just then, but for those hearing about it for the first time, how would you sum up Maps in Fabric? What makes it so powerful? I know you touched on it just then, but just in a nutshell.
Yeah, I think Maps in Fabric is a tool that everybody can use without starting to write an application in the first place. So if you work with Azure Maps or Bing Maps for Enterprise or other mapping APIs, often you have to start writing an application, right? It's a web application, an internal application. Somebody needs to write code, right, to interpret what perhaps the business owner wants to accomplish, right? There's friction in that communication in there. There may be things lost. There's iterations that take time, right? With Map in Fabric, we want to open up the canvas for building location-enabled application to anyone. So without having the need to write code, even business decision makers should be able to get their content from very large amounts of data easily on the map. We do the heavy lifting, the optimization in the background. We make it easy to draw this picture, to bring together real-time data, where something is, how it gets there. And that allows you to build the application without needing to be a developer. So that data citizen who can now use his business understanding to build map-centric application rather than being a geospatial specialist or a software developer that is required to do that democratizes the access to mapping technologies, I feel.
Fantastic. From someone who's been in mapping for over 20 years, I just love the idea that it can get out to such a wide audience and people can make the most of their data without having to go into all the detail and can view it and really understand, because that's one of the biggest things in business is understanding your data and everything else that goes alongside it. And this is making it simple for people. So yeah, really excited about what the future holds. So when looking ahead, talking about the future, what does the future of mapping and location intelligence look like to you as these technologies continue to evolve?
I think it's a fascinating future that we have where, generative AI systems and human work side by side, and the AI is augmenting the human ingenuity and creativity by taking the grind out of many things, right? So if you look at some of the AI technologies that are out there, we have used them for decades, right? For imagery analytics, that was already there. It's not new. We have been using AI in geocoding as well. But with generative AI, we reach the point where we can essentially create new things, right? Where we have somebody who can take the grind out of the work and help us make the decisions, right? So it's also so that in most cases, customers don't just want to look at the map, but they want to ask questions. Where's the best place to open a new store, right? How will the next England game at the FIFA World Cup affect my on-time delivery SLA? What does that do to the traffic, right? All of these questions have some form of location, movement, timing constraint, and business context in there that you would have to think about before. How do you factor that into your own thinking? How do you build the application? There's integration that needs to be thought through, authentication to the different data sets, technical hurdles that you have to overcome, right? And if you operate on such a unified platform like Microsoft Fabric and then combine it maybe with other IQ components that Microsoft has for work in Foundry, Web IQ now as well, the 4 big IQs, then it becomes more of a decision system, right? So you can have something where, you model your business into an ontology rather than thinking about where the data lives and how it comes together. And suddenly humans and agents can reason over the same data. Right. So that means what you see is something that the AI can interpret, can monitor on your behalf. It can look at different things. It can anticipate and perhaps model and simulate already future scenarios, what if scenarios, and it can come up with recommendations for you and present you with options, and you make the choice in there. So I feel we're taking the grind out of the work with something that we built with these location-enabled agentic systems, and we help elevate this from more a pure infrastructure and development thing to a decision platform.
It's amazing to see how things are changing, and we are, like you say, in an era of wanting things at our fingertips. So having quick responses, being able to get the right information that we need right there, right now, and how to adjust our days, our deliveries, anything that moves forward. This does meet people's requirements. It can really enhance those businesses. And I know we touched on the AI and how that's changing the way organizations use location data, but is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I would say a significant portion of enterprise data has some location component in it. But that value is often underutilized, right? Because location data can be hard to access. You need to have specialized systems. You need to prepare it to go from one coordinate system to another, from one projection to another, to bring it comparable and reason over it, right? And I think that's what Maps in Fabric will change. It allows analysts, data engineers, decision makers to work with location directly in the same environment where they already work with the business data, with the real-time signals, with their data engineering workflows, and increasingly with AI components. And that helps organization move from simply visualizing data to making location part of real-time intelligence, right? So it's not like processes that you run once a day, once a month. It's something that continuously operates for you with data and time and space, and the intelligence and the reasoning you can do on top of that. Can support monitoring, planning, risk analysis, service optimization, real-time decision-making. And it does that in a way that broadens the access to not just the GIS specialists, but for many more people across the organization. I'd say we're still early in the journey. Maps in Fabric just recently reached general availability, and there's quite a lot that we have in our plans and ideas how we want to improve and go even deeper and become more supportive for our customers on the platform. But I think the direction is fairly clear. Location intelligence is becoming a native part now of a data and AI platform, and not an afterthought or something that lives on the side.
Perfect. Yeah, it is, like you say, it is a very much underutilized area, but it can show so much value to people using it, and you just need to unlock it. Maps and Fabric is definitely one way to unlock it and move forward. When we're moving to the end of the podcast now, and I've got a couple more questions for you. So can you leave us with your final words on Maps and Fabric? Because I'm going to advise everybody to go have a look at Maps and Fabric, have a play and have a look, because it is a fantastic resource. You have some great information out there. But from your perspective, what are your final words for it?
For Maps and Fabric in particular? Well, I would say don't just look at the maps in Fabric, right? But look at Fabric as a whole, right? Because it is this becoming part of a larger thing that is more than just the maps, that is more than just geocoding or routing or search, right? It is something that you can use to bring your data together, to reason over that, to experiment with decision support tools and agents or so that can help make your life easier. Getting started with the map is very rewarding, because like in a few mouse clicks, you can have a visual experience. You can see your assets moving around the map. There is very easy onboarding to that platform, right? But it is really worth looking beyond just the map and understanding and internalizing what opportunities Microsoft Fabric brings as a whole data and AI platform, not just for the geospatial aspect, not just fine-tuned for one particular application, but something where everybody can build applications around it, analyze data, and drive for better business outcomes and less grind.
Perfect. And yeah, look at it as a whole. We will be looking to, Grey Matter, we will be looking to educate people and show them what Fabric can do. So look out for that in the future with us as well. But yeah, Johannes, finally, what is it like working with Grey Matter?
It has been awesome with you specifically, Jill, but with so many other of your colleagues and Mark. We have been working together for well over a decade, probably nearly 2, right? That we have been working now together, starting more on the European side, then expanding into, our global operations that we have in there. You have always been a trusted advisor for our customers and for us. And I think you are a big part of the success that we have, right? Some of the challenges when it comes to migrations that always looks initially like a grind for customers. You're taking away something from me, right? And I need to do work that I haven't planned. But, together with you and the folks that we have across our team and across Microsoft, we try to look at this also as an opportunity and not just this thing where we need to do some work to replace the one with the other, but can we help customers to make better value, better outcome, and potentially have more impact in other parts of the business as well. I think that kind of customer obsession that you have, that we want to have also on our side and aspire to have across everyone at Microsoft and Grey Matter, I think that is the same spirit. And that's why I think it's good for our customers, it's good for us, and it has been a genuine pleasure working with you.
Thank you. And it's a genuine pleasure working with you and your team as well, because our clients will provide us feedback and we can honestly provide that feedback back to you in its raw and unfiltered form. And you will be able to assist. You do work with us and you do work us through. And like you said, if there's challenges, we will make sure that everyone puts the customer first, and we will do everything in our power to make sure that between the two of us, that we look to move forward, and we don't want anybody to be disheartened or anything with the product. It is there to enhance and move forward. And we will continue to educate people. We will continue to put podcasts out like this with the support of yourself and the team of upcoming things. So I appreciate it and looking forward to seeing what the future holds for us. So I'm going to wrap this podcast up now, Johannes, and say thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure and very informative, and I hope our listeners have found the same. And for those of you listening, we hope you have enjoyed this episode. So if you have any questions, email us at info@greymatter.com. Have a listen to the rest of our episodes. There's been some fantastic previous ones, and they will be more in the future. We cover lots of topics, including AI, cybersecurity, logistics, dev tools, and more. Plus, we have our next season coming out soon, and it's all about cybersecurity. So subscribe now so you don't miss out. Thank you, Johannes. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.